Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is set to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later today in Beijing. The meeting comes against the backdrop of President Trump's tariff threats, US demands for more defence spending and commitments on Taiwan. Albanese would need to walk a fine line between Australia's biggest trading partner and its most important long-term security ally.
One of the things about Australia and China that's so important is that we build people-to-people relations, and we do that by the participation of Australians here, whether it be here in football, whether it be the business relationships that we have here as well. I've brought with me a whole range of business people from the resources sector, the tourism sector, from the education sector.
Let's get more when it comes to the expectations from the PM's visit to China. I'll bring in Darren Lim, Senior Lecturer in the School of Politics and International Relations at the Australian National University in Canberra. Really great to have you with us. And sort of on the one hand, we've seen bilateral relations improve markedly compared to just a few years ago. On the other hand, the global environment and some of the demands when it comes to diplomatic finesse and balance are really more challenging than ever. How fine is that line that the Prime Minister has to tread on this visit, given the amount of perhaps diplomatic deft that is really required?
It's a very fine line, but at the same time, this visit is happening in a context where both sides, I think, want a successful visit. The chaos of the Trump administration is giving Beijing a significant opportunity to play the calm, reasonable leader and to welcome Australia, after a few years of relationship turmoil. On the Australian side, of course, the emphasis here is on economics, it's on jobs, the Prime Minister's domestic economic agenda, which is very much enabled by a strong trading relationship with China. So I think both sides want to accentuate the positive, albeit in the context of significant differences on many other issues.
How thorny are some of the regional geopolitical issues, be it any sort of clarification on Canberra's positioning on Taiwan, which of course the Prime Minister did give this week, but also some of the concerns over what's viewed as Beijing's overreach in the South China Sea, in the Pacific, some of the islands?
As you say, there are a range of issues. We've seen the Trump administration put pressure, it seems, on Australia to clarify its position on Taiwan. And the Prime Minister and other political leaders have done a good job of batting that one away and reiterating the government's position that it supports the status quo and will not entertain hypotheticals. And I think that's a reasonable position that everyone would expect. On the broader geopolitical issues like the South China Sea and the Pacific, look, I think both sides have their positions. They're well understood. They will be raised, but I don't expect that they will be a major source of irritation. Much more likely is the specific bilateral disputes that the countries have. For example, the Darwin port lease, which the Prime Minister promised during the recent election campaign to cancel from a Chinese company and return to presumably Australian ownership. That's the kind of thing that might cause more of an irritation when the two leaders meet today.
But would you see sort of any shifting in positions? I mean, it sort of seems unlikely given the expectation is that both want to have a positive trip as well.
I think both sides understand that they are required to ventilate their grievances, their differences. There is an expectation among the Australian public and the Australian media that we will raise some of our disputes, the plight of Dr. Yang Hengjun, a democracy activist, Australian citizen who is in jail in China, our concerns about China's military build-up and the lack of transparency, which of course Foreign Minister Penny Wong raised with her counterpart in Malaysia last week. So these things are required to be said, but is there an expectation that Australia can move China on these issues? Probably not. And so both sides will go through the motions on these disputes, but try to shift things to the positive agenda as quickly as possible.
One thing that also could come up, though, is more on the economic side, and we've seen some MOUs or deals possibly being signed, but there's also that key sticking point of China wanting more access to the Australian economy that maybe Canberra also isn't willing to hand over.
Yes, this is a really interesting evolution, I think, in the economic relationship, because for a very long time, Australia was able to enjoy what I would call arm's length trade with China. We can sell our resources, we can sell our food, we can welcome Chinese tourists, but these transactions aren't very intimate, right? They don't involve an ongoing relationship. What China wants, of course, is more direct involvement in the Australian economy through more foreign investment, especially in our resources sector. But we've also seen China's ambassador to Australia say that perhaps artificial intelligence might be included in the free trade agreement. And this, of course, brings back memories of Australia being the first country to ban Huawei from our 5G network back in 2018. The Australian government wants to keep China at arm's length. We are not very trusting of Chinese technology and the relationship between Chinese companies and the state, and we prefer, of course, to keep sensitive investments in minerals, out of Chinese control as well, for a whole host of reasons. And that, I think, is the real sticking point here. That desire for a more intimate economic relationship, a tighter embrace from Beijing, which would potentially lead to more influence down the track, and Australia's effort to keep the economic relationship robust but at arm's length.
We've seen legal action being commenced over Northern Minerals, essentially. Do you think the strategic, politically key issue of rare earths, Australia's opportunities, China's stranglehold, is likely to become a contentious bilateral issue?
Look, it's very hard to say with certainty. Australia has got a significant interest in developing its processing capacity in rare earths, and it sees a great opportunity to contribute to the friendshoring economic security initiative of the United States and other partners. At the same time, we do need Chinese technology, and China remains the world leader in rare earths processing. So there are both opportunities and risks in this sector, and I don't expect that this to play a significant role in this particular meeting, but it's going to be an ongoing irritant, but also source of potential growth into the future.
Darren, thanks so much for joining us this morning. That was Darren Lim there, Senior Lecturer in the School of Politics and International Relations at Australian National University. And we'll have more on Australia Ahead. That's every Tuesday at 10:40 a.m. if you're watching in Sydney, 8:40 a.m. in Hong Kong. Plus, you can tune into the Bloomberg Australia podcast, which delves into the biggest stories shaping the country's role in global business. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, or Bloomberg.com.